maybe we'll start to kick things off. Hope everyone's well. So, hi, my name's Jesse. We're doing a webinar today on using Agile methodologies for effective course creation. So before we before we kick off, I've just got a question for the chat. It is, have you had an experience implementing Agile methodologies in your learning projects? And if so, tell us about it. Seeing a few no's there. Brendan, hello. A little from Mandy. Trudy, using ADDIE mostly, but not specifically an Agile process methodology. Great. We do dive into how ADDIE and Agile differ a bit later on. Glenn? Yes, I have. However, it wasn't entirely successful, hence my participation today. Okay. Feel free to elaborate in the chat when you have time. And to all the others out there, don't worry if this, if this Agile thing's new. We'll be going through it during the presentation. But yeah, if it's not so new, that's also great. I hope you can get some useful information out of it. Tony, not sure. You might have found you've implemented a particular aspect of it, but not known. Oh, thank you, Mandy. Okay, well, thanks for all the responses. Maybe we'll move on. So, here's just what to expect from today. We've got questions. I'll be asking you questions all the way through the session. And if you do have any other questions that you would like, just drop them in the chat. We can get to them. What else to expect from the session is we'll do a primer on Agile principles, methodologies, and tools. So if you are new, you'll hopefully get that sort of grounding. Also, we'll compare Agile to traditional learning models, mostly ADDIE, and how does it stack up? And then later on, we'll dive into how we use Agile here at eWorks. Okay, so we'll do a proper intro. My name is Jesse Harrison. I am the Corporate Courseware Lead here at eWorks. I've been in education for about a decade now, and I've done all the jobs. I've sort of done an end-to-end process. I've been the project manager, I've been content design, I've done multimedia development, I've been in ed tech. I've sort of done all those sort of tasks and jobs throughout the creation of a online learning course. As I mentioned, I am the Corporate Courseware Lead here at eWorks, and the corporate team is what we do is we create bespoke learning content, and that means we specialize in understanding unique learning objectives that our clients have, and then we work closely with them to provide specialized learning solutions that fit their cohort's needs. I'm sorry if that sounded very corporate. This is the corporate team, after all. But really what that boils down to is that we have this amazing opportunity to work with a wide variety of clients and organizations and work with them to create those learning experiences based on those requirements. And some of those requirements are actually quite niche sometimes. And that makes for some really varied and interesting work. But it also means that projects can be tricky. We do employ some strategies to help us meet those requirements, and we use Agile to do so. Okay, so what's Agile? So we're getting into a real sort of primer here. Let's get down to it. If you were to Google Agile, you would probably see an image like this, or something similar, like a diagram similar. It'll vary, but what's important to notice about this diagram is that there are pretty obvious steps. We've got requirements feeding into design, design feeds into develop. We've got develop feeding into test, deploy, review, and then it reviews the last step, and then we're sort of coming in where we started. It's important to look at that review step because Agile will dictate that if the learning or the project or the task was unsuccessful, that you then would hop back into design and develop and test and iterate again until you've got to a place where you feel like you've had a success or a completed task. If you're not familiar with how Agile works, like it might be a bit weird starting the loop again. May seem kind of onerous, but we'll see this in practice later. And by the way, Agile doesn't really stand for anything. It's not an acronym like ADDIE. It's just Agile. Okay, so before we get into the nuts and bolts of how Agile relates to our work as learning providers, we can just talk about the benefits of Agile. So what Agile is really great at is breaking down those requirements, your problems, ideas, into those smaller parts and develop and test those possible solutions quickly. It also allows you to collaborate and validate, and that encourages, it's about encouraging early feedback and allows teams and stakeholders and clients to all align early. Lastly, it provides early involvement from key project personnel, and you can catch and identify any evolving requirements and changes early and allow for flexibility and a quick response. So notice the main themes that are popping out here with the benefits are that it's about being fast, it's about being quick to solve, it's about getting on the right track, getting on the right track with your clients' requirements and the direction of the project. And it's also about encouraging communication, feedback, getting everyone on the same page, because it's really important to be in agreement on those kind of things early. So, Agile is a concept. It's made up of some key principles that's great to understand. Iterative development, collaboration, satisfaction, and flexibility and adaptability. So these principles are, they're sometimes called values. If you are doing any kind of research after this on Agile and you come across key values, same thing, principles, values. With talking about the first one, the iterative development, could also be called continuous improvement. It very much describes that diagram that we were just looking at previously, and the benefits we saw, that looping of the tasks, the steps, until you can say you're successful or you've got approval, and you've got a clear direction in mind. The collaboration satisfaction principle there, look, that's great for getting on the same page. We've discussed that already. You really want to allow team members, clients, stakeholders to align early and focus on the needs of the learners. Everyone needs to agree on that for a successful project. It also just helps foster that really strong communication that you need when you are on these kind of projects, especially with those external players. You're bringing them along for the ride, and when they feel a part of the journey, they often become really engaged and really ready to work with you. You really get that benefit of being transparent with them and being really communicative with them. Last one, flexibility and adaptability. Because we iterate during this process and we iterate quickly, and then we get that added engagement and feedback from the previous principal, we can really start to identify and respond to any of those evolving requirements and changes that happen during the course of these projects. New needs for the client and the learner might emerge, and this allows you to be responsive to that. And of course, how the team responds is up to them, but it's always better to know and highlight these things early so something can be done about it. Next, we'll sum it up. Agile just allows us to adapt to change and deliver value quickly. And those principles are in that sentence. We've got iterative development highlighted quickly. We've got collaboration about delivering value, and we've got adapting to change with flexibility. Okay, that was a lot to take in. Let's have a quick check-in. I am wondering, and please pop in the chat, how do these Agile key principles factor into your current process for developing course content? I'll put them up there on screen so we can see. And if they aren't factoring in, how could they, complement or enhance your existing processes? Okay, Adriana, thank you. Iterative development may apply through feedback received from learners and clients. Absolutely. Anyone else identifying any of these Agile principles in their current workplace, current process? Andy, I like the collaborative nature of Agile. It helps understand the project quickly. Exactly. Yeah. Shivali, in my current line of work, collaboration and communication play an important role. Yeah, it's super important. Jackie G, welcome. No problem. We haven't been going that long. Right, Donna, excellent point there. The current project didn't use these principles early in its development and could have benefited from early feedback and being more open to the adaptation the client needs. Absolutely. Tesha, thank you. Definitely helps develop a shared ownership by clients and providers. It is important. Okay, thanks everyone. I might just move on. Okay, so let's get to methodology. So we've talked about principles. So Agile methodologies are essentially frameworks and practices. These frameworks provide, guidelines for applying those principles. And you may know some of those popular frameworks there. I'm sure you've heard of Kanban, Scrum. The other two maybe not, but they are those two, probably the top two. These kind of frameworks just, they help you apply those principles. So, and they provide the guidelines, the rules on how you can do that. It's actually quite a few. I counted 13 or so here, 14 maybe, but I'm sure there's more. There are many out there. Agile originated from the IT world, specifically software development. So as you can see by the names here, it does skew a little bit in that direction. But many of them have been successfully adapted to other industries, and education is no exception. Okay, so how are you going to choose your methodology? Well, Agile allows you to build a framework that fits your needs. You don't have to go with just one. It could be a combination, and a hint for later, that's what we do. You don't even need to take all of the guidelines in a particular methodology. You can mix and match depending on what makes sense to your business. And let's take a look at the most popular two right now. So it's Scrum and Kanban, and look at what guidelines they apply with those key principles. All right, so Kanban. You've probably seen a Kanban board out there, even if you want to wear, that's what it was called. It's really like a visual approach to Agile. Boards are used to track the tasks. It shows a workflow, and it shows you a really high level view of how your project's going, and that gives transparency and clarity when you're on the projects for all members, not just the project manager. How it really works is tasks are created and they're shown as cards or post-its sometimes on the board, and there are columns that represent the various stages of a task. Once all the tasks, when a task is worked on, it's moved to the most appropriate column for it that represents the status for that task. So you might see up here, there's a backlog, there's a doing and a done. They're very simple like that mostly. Sometimes it's to do, in progress, completed. It's really that. Just a quick tip for you. It actually originated from Toyota. They're credited with starting it way back in the 1940s. So it's been around a while. Here's a more modern representation. Realistically, when you're looking at Kanban, most project management software now will do a board, will have board functionality. Trello is probably the most well-known Kanban tool, but you'll find it in all sorts of software now. Microsoft Planner is part of the Microsoft platform, 365 platform, and it's a pretty good alternative. Here's a screenshot of what that looks like, and you'll see that it looks like the screenshot before. There's a backlog, there's progress, there's review, there's completed. They're often very simple with the columns, and the cards will move in that right direction until they are all done. And when they're all done, the project's done. So a pretty simple methodology to use. It's good for small projects. And it's just really good for getting that high level view really quickly. Of course, pros and cons with Kanban. The pros would be highly visible progression. It's really easy to see where cards are, what column they're in, how many tasks are left in, say, the backlog. If you've got a whole bunch in backlog, that means you're not really progressing. Tasks aren't being completed. It really does give you that instant high level view. It's a great way to track the amount of work that's getting done. And it's great for meetings and stand-ups because you can pull up on screen and everyone can see where they're at and give progress updates, and you'll be moving cards during the meeting and actually having that real-time progress shown. There are some cons. If it's a larger project, that board will start to get a bit crowded if there are too many cards, and you'll lose that sort of overall high level view. And that means that one board might not be enough. You might be managing a few boards, especially if it's a large project. I've just put down here how this checks in with our key principles, and it can actually align pretty well. Iterative development is doable. It just means a card may be moving quite a lot through the columns back and forth. You will have to set up your columns like that sort of circular diagram we've seen before about there being design, development, testing, deployment, review, and they will sort of move along those columns until they do hit that done column and they can move on. Collaboration satisfaction ranks highly with this. It is something that everyone can see and get their information from. They can update those cards with information. It's really a highly visible way of doing things. And flexibility and adaptability, again, scores highly. It's just because you are so aware of what's going on, you've got that great view. You can see when there's problems arising. So if you're seeing that tasks aren't being done, it's pretty noticeable, and you're able to put that into action without doing too much digging. Okay, let's get the next one, Scrum. So Scrum is perhaps the most popular Agile methodology. It's known for its implementation of sprints, which are time-boxed periods of development. They generally run for 2 to 4 weeks, but there's no real hard and fast rule on that. You get to decide how long they run for. Could be days, could be weeks. It's really up to you. One curious thing about Scrum is that it has no deadlines. It has deadlines, but there's no overall timeline. And this is mainly because it does come from that software development background, where it's about supporting a product that is continuously being released and implemented, like a piece of software. There are deadlines for releases, but there is really no end to a project like that. It's just something that's just ongoing. So it's a curious thing. It's also known for the stand-up. So stand-up is that daily or regular check-in that gives that team, gives the team the opportunity to report their progress in front of everyone and discuss any challenges that they're facing. And it's a good way to workshop those problems with the group. It also introduces some roles to the team, which might not be familiar. Product owner and Scrum Master. So the product owner can be mapped back to a project manager. It just have a different name. The project owner or product owner is about creating those tasks for the team and making sure that they are prioritized appropriately and that they're actually getting worked on. Whereas the Scrum Master is actually someone who is embedded in the team and just looking at that Scrum process and making sure it's running well. So we can take a look at Scrum in action. This is basically it. So they have there's a planning phase at the start, and it's about planning the sprint. Sprint, remember, is that time boxed, block of time. During that planning, they're defining their goals, they're prioritizing their tasks, they're allocating, all the goals, everything they want to kind of iterate on this sprint. We then start getting into the sprint. So we're having daily stand-ups, and as mentioned, that's that kind of check-in point where you can, report your progress, but also get some advice on challenges that are happening. We have that actual sprint, the development happening during the sprint, and that's where you're developing, you're testing, you're reviewing, you're kind of doing as many iterations as you can during the time. And then once that's done, it's over, you are doing reviews. So you're gathering feedback from your stakeholders based on what you've delivered during the sprint. And you could then also have somewhat of a retrospective afterwards. And maybe not straight after the sprint, but maybe every month, maybe after every milestone, there's that sort of added review point in there where you can stop and really take stock of what happened and see if you need to pivot, change direction, improve. implement changes, that kind of stop and think point. And then you repeat the whole thing again based on your new task. So it is a somewhat ongoing process, especially with how I mentioned about there being no really end time, but you are hitting deadlines around sprints, so there is progress made. And just to cap off here, there is a lot of pros and cons with using Scrum. The pros are it highlights and identifies challenges early in the piece because you are going through that really fast iterative process. You've got a high level of transparency because you're meeting all the time. You're hearing about progress, you're hearing about challenges. It brings in useful tracking and review tools. So things like, having sprints, having stand-ups, having retros is really highly useful for determining just how well things are going, what you need to change, how you need to do it. And it's great, as I mentioned, for continuous ongoing implementation products. Cons, though, it is a lot of touch points for the team. There's planning, there's stand-ups, there's reviews, there's retros. It's a lot of meetings, which you could come to resent. It does require buy-in from everyone. If you've got people who are set in their ways, they will find it difficult to adjust. And this will affect the team if some people are doing it and some people aren't. As I mentioned, there's timelines but no deadlines, or deadlines but no timelines. I think a pure implementation of Scrum would not be well suited for a learning development project. We do have timelines for courses, whether it's students getting in or what have you. It's not something that's ongoing. There's usually an end to the project. So a combination approach might be best. Just checking in on the principles though, iterative development, check. There is a lot of iterative development. Collaboration satisfaction, there is. So there's lots of review points and also just meeting check-ins. So that's also an opportunity for clients and stakeholders to come along and also participate. And flexibility and adaptability, yes, ranks highly because there is, again, that iterative approach. It allows you to find out what's not working and make changes. Okay, again, that was a lot to take in, so let's have a break. I'm curious about what kind of learning design models that you currently use or the ones that you're most familiar with. Tyrone, ADDIE, yep, absolutely. I think most people would say that. ADDIE, thank you. ADDIE. Oh, Mandy Blooms. Lots of ADDIE. I would say ADDIE would dominate the conversation. Thanks, everyone. As expected. So let's talk about it. So how does Agile and ADDIE match up? I mean, just from these diagrams here, it's pretty clear about where they differ. ADDIE, we do get that waterfall. It's often called waterfall, as we'll see, where it's a bunch of sequential steps that are only performed after the last one is done. Agile, as we've seen, is more of that rapid iterative approach where a lot of those steps are done, before perhaps one step of that is done. Let's take a close look. Okay, so yeah, as mentioned, it's also sometimes referred to as a waterfall method, and it's due to that sequential approach, especially with learning design. If you didn't know, ADDIE stands for Analysis, Design, Development, Implementation, and Evaluation. And really is that tasks are completed sequentially, and each phase flows into the next like a waterfall. So let's see how this matches up against our principles here. Pros, there's a structured approach. That's what ADDIE is great for. There's a strong emphasis on planning at the beginning of the project. It's really clear about setting deadlines and requirements, and that planning phase really allows you to drill down and get to it. There's a structured implementation, as we see by the sequential steps. Really can't do anything else until you've completed something else. And at the end, there's that comprehensive review that you can have. The cons, though, it's quite rigid, it's quite linear. There's not really much chance for any flexibility or adaptability there. We're slow to see some initial progress due to sometimes exhausting planning phase. It can feel like you haven't quite started yet. There's also limited client involvement and engagement because they're really only coming in at the end when things are done for a review phase, not really being brought in all that much during. And one of the more important ones, it's that issues may not be exposed until you're well into the project cycle, and that's why Agile's rapid iteration can help you identify that earlier is such a big plus here. How it goes with our principles, iterative development, not really. Collaboration, satisfaction, some, that it's quite late in the game, and flexibility and adaptability, not too much. Okay, so the Agile experience. So knowing what we've learned about Agile and ADDIE, just to summarize, it allows for flexibility and adaptability. There's small increments of the course are developed and tested in short sprints. Early and frequent delivery of working prototypes, really important because you want that feedback. Stakeholder involvement emphasizes collaboration. So we want them to feel, along for the ride, along for the journey, giving that regular feedback, letting you know you're in the right direction, being able to, proceed with confidence, and not be proceeding based on assumptions about what you think the learner might want or what the client might want. Minimizes the likelihood of major project failures and costly rework. Yes, because you are constantly sort of looking at the process. You're able to handle those evolving requirements. Nothing should get by you because you've been constantly iterating. You're, holding back feedback back into the process, back into your understanding of the project. A faster time to market and a competitive edge. Yes, because you're just getting it done sooner and you're getting it done to the client's needs. No guesswork. Okay, so how do we use Agile here at eWorks in the corporate team, especially? So we actually employ a bit of a hybrid approach, where we take, as I mentioned earlier, you can take bits and pieces from some of them and sort of construct your own. We take elements from Kanban, Scrum, and we do a little bit of ADDIE as well. We do ADDIE mostly at the start. In the waterfall, we kind of employ that at the start to properly define and confirm the project timelines and determine the resources required. One thing about ADDIE is that it does that part really well. You need to be pretty clear about when the project's deadline is and the requirements. We use it as a start. We always have deadlines for our projects. It's not like an ongoing evolving thing like some other software projects. Educational projects do have deadlines because people need to start learning. And once we are done with all that, then we give it work on a prototype. And what we do is with this prototype, it's usually probably the first piece of learning content. If it's a course that we're working on, maybe it's the first module or one of the modules. And we will work on it, iterate on that within a really quick sprint until it's complete. And we use that feedback that we get from our clients when they're involved in this process to validate our thinking and, validate on actually with a variety of factors. So we use that learning from the prototype phase to update our planning and assumptions we could start making decisions like, wow, that actually went really quick. Maybe we could speed up a timeline here, or we actually needed more time to get there, and we can foresee other units or other modules taking that much time or more. We actually need to get some more resources. So it's giving you that ability to make those decisions that will influence the work later on and make it easy for you, hopefully. If the prototype has received negative feedback from the client, then we will run through that process again until we get to that spot where we can actually say that it's done and we understand fully what they were after and we're able to replicate that. So once successful, we can start that next piece with confidence and that we've met all the client and the learner's requirements. Okay, so yeah, it really does help us move forward. Sometimes you might not be clear on what your learning approach is and you are trying a few things. Perfect for this kind of work. It's really important to get this stuff nailed down early. You really want to find out what your direction, your approach is, and be able to move on with the rest of the project. So we, subsequent work sprints are worked out in the same way. Each time we're feeding the outcomes back into our understanding of the project, and always looking for that point where it might evolve into something else and seeing what we can do about it. As far as the other parts of the methodologies go, we do hold regular stand-ups and check-ins, track the progress and highlight any challenges. We might do them daily, we might do them weekly. It just kind of depends on the project. And of course, we use Kanban board as well to track those tasks and really get that high-level view. So we pick and choose the parts that we want from each of those methodologies. Okay, so we're actually winding up here. Just to summarize, Agile instructional design offers a dynamic and effective approach to learning development. You embrace flexibility, collaboration, and iterative development, and you can, be assured to deliver high quality learning experiences that meet the evolving needs of the learners and the stakeholders. And it really is about that kind of being adaptive, being flexible. It's about, finding out those things early so you can change and it not be such a big deal down the track if it pops up later in the project. And just lastly, we can help because we do this kind of work. Just want to finish up with one more question for the chat. What's one of your Agile methodology takeaways from today's session? What's something that you've learned today that you think you can take back with you and augment a part of the process or just get a positive outcome, a more positive outcome than before? Trudy, that you can use all those methodologies within one longer project? Yes, you can. Yeah, it's really up to you how you kind of piece it all together. Hybrid approach may be best. I tend to think so. I generally use a hybrid approach for most of the things. I find sitting in one particular methodology can be restricting. Jason, the ability to mix methodologies? Yes, absolutely you can. Really, it's really about what works for your team or your business. Shabali, you knew what Kanban was, but need to learn more about Scrum? Yeah, great. ADDIE mashup, yes. Yeah. Tony, the adoption of Lean into courseware development is excellent. I think it fits, yeah. Tyrone, I think a reflective lens is vital in improving the processes and informing future directions. It's great that is incorporated in your approach. it just makes you're able to predict a little more and probably have a better time on the project. Brendan, not as yet? Is incorporating Agile not as yet, or? Haven't got a takeaway just yet? That's fine if so. I mean, it is something worth looking into. There's lots of research you can do about there. Just one piece of advice I can just give the chat right now, if you're thinking about, doing some or what, just you just have to do it. It's not something you can just do a little bit of. You kind of need to just do it, and be wary of one thing when you are. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of methodologies. There's a lot of different things inside those methodologies. It's easy to get lost in those and do them to the letter or do them by the book. Just remember that it's about getting outcomes. So it's okay to mix and match and take things out and put things there and construct your own, because it's about you getting your work done in a better way. Okay, I think we're winding up. We'll just finish up with the chat here. Thanks, Shivali. Thank you. Brendan Hill, like having a larger set of gold clubs to use. Sure. Tony, can we get a couple of feet? Yeah, we'll organize something. Thank you. Okay, so if you do need to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. There's our details there. I did have one last thing. Thank you. So I just want to thank Verena for helping set this up. For one of my staff members, Lucy, thank you so much. There is a survey that we'll send out. Make sure you please fill that in. It'd be amazing. I think that might be it. I've got a note here to mention our next webinar, which is about the future of e-learning with trends in the training and learning industry. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Cheers.